I just saw. Welcome to Coach Development Live on the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. If you're a new or developing coach who wants to coach with confidence, get better on the floor, and make a real impact, you're in the right place. Every episode, you'll hear from Level 4 coaches Todd and and me, Kristin Bowen, as we break down practical coaching tips, real-world strategies, and answer your biggest coaching questions live. No fluff. Just the help you need to sharpen your skills and become the best coach you can be. Let's get started.
Just the help you need to get exactly what you need. What's happening?
Good morning.
How we doing?
I'm good. Glad to be back.
Yeah, we missed you last week. Appreciate you being in the chat though. Yeah. Still participating. I love it.
How are you?
Fantastic. Up early this morning. Got my plunge in already. I'm good to go. Yeah. Oh, we got the whole crew's already here. We got Omar in the house. Jess is with us. Brad already here bright and early on a Thursday morning. I love seeing the whole squad already making moves.
Oh, Marlena.
Oh, Marlene. There we go. Yep. What's in my cup today? I've got I've got some bold bean actually in my cup. I'm in like I'm just going to call it like a coffee of the month club where they send me a different bag every month. I forget exactly how they phrase it, but they're based out of Jacksonville, pretty darn solid. But you guys took advantage of that perk offer, 31% off on the 13th. I got my perk coming. Did you get some, Kabo?
I didn't. I forgot. Yeah. And then I woke up the next morning. I was like, oh, I missed it. Next month, I'll get it.
Yeah, for sure.
It is good though.
I'm in the house. Will we get the sunshine bloom on the camera? Is that the bloom of the?
No, because it's been raining here for like 17 days straight. No, It's rained all week. It's rainy and no sunshine bloom today.
No sunshine. Darn it. I wasn't sure if that was a coffee question. I was like, you guys want to see me pour a cup? You guys want to see me?
It's when the
I think that makes way more sense.
Yeah. Also I have my blinds closed preemptively, so we're good.
There we go.
What are we talking about today, Todd?
Yeah, so we are continuing our journey. DT was on last week and it was awesome. And it was super fun chatting with her as always. And we started talking about queuing, and we want to continue down that road. So I know I asked her the same question. Kabo, there's 3 different queuing styles. What are they?
We've got verbal, visual, and tactile. 3 different queuing styles. And then any combination of any of those 3.
That's right. And in the real world, they kind of all overlap. If I'm given a tactile cue, there's probably a verbal component to it. I want you to press up with your elbows until you hit my hand. Mm-hmm. If I'm given a visual one, it's usually like, hey, your chest is doing this. I want you to keep your chest up like this. And Brad, to your point, that painting right behind Kabo, that is one of my paintings, and I'll be in touch. I know I've got one that I'm going to be sending your way. Anyways,
it's just we're
hitting all of it. We're just
all of it. This is turning into the Todd. Let's just pump up and advertise all of
everything I got going on.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah. Next week, I'll be prepared to do some of my stuff.
Yeah, we go. Let's get some pet portraits. We see one in the other side there. Let's see if we can get some members to Drive Fitness. Let's go. Do a little bit of everything. But we got verbal, visual, and tactile cues. We talked some last week about the characteristics of each. I think it's valuable just to continue to reinforce that. So verbal cues, give me some characteristics that make a good verbal cue, or what are we trying to accomplish with verbal cues to make sure that they have a chance to be good?
They need to be simple. They need to be actionable. Typically when we say simple, that also means they're going to be relatively short, right? But a huge thing is just how simplistic they are and how actionable they are. So we can't leave any question for our athletes. I always tell the coaches, if your athlete has to ask, how do I do it? It's not actionable. So we just have to tell them what body part needs to move and how it's going to move. So short, simple, actionable.
Yeah. And I think if we ground ourselves with that concept of body part out of place, where does it go to get in place? That's going to set us up for success. More often than not, the cue itself is only going to be 3 words. And now to Matt's point, we need to say somebody's name so they know who we're talking to, but we add the name at the beginning. It's like, hey, Kristin, knees out. Awesome. 2-word cue plus the name, that's 3 total words. Even like if we're getting into something more complex, like say hip extension on a push jerk or something, and you might be referencing the next rep where it'd be like, hey, Kristin, on the next rep, I want you to jump hard. It still is going to be pretty limited on the total volume of words that we say. Oop, you were throwing one up there. My bad. Go ahead.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, name, body part, direction. That's it. I challenge myself, and I often challenge other coaches. See if you can make this be 3 to 5 words max when you're given a verbal cue. And I think to your point, if the question is asked from the athlete, how do I do that? Or if there's any chance that it's not like that they could misinterpret it, like, hey, get tight.
Get tight.
I know what you mean by tight, but in what way? I can get tight in a bad position. I can crunch down. Like I would say right now, I'm really tight, like, and I'm in a terrible position to do anything. So how can we make that more actionable? There's things like I'll jokingly say when I hear somebody, and this usually is like an Olympic lift or hip extension, hey, I want you to explode on this next one. I'm like, wait a second. I don't know. Are they a bomb or what's going on over here? I don't know how somebody physically explodes. It's like, I get the concept as a coach with the understanding, but there's a decent chance that our athletes probably don't exactly know what you're asking them to do. Now they'll probably nod their head and be like, okay, yeah, I got it. And that's, from my experience, that's usually just like, okay, I'm going to say yes, so you get the hell away from me and go do something else because I want you to leave me alone.
Yeah, or they don't want to say, I don't understand what you're asking me to do. Either way, it's just gonna, it's just, okay, got it. And then they don't make the change because they don't actually understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Summer.
Tell us about that autopilot post.
Yeah, I put a post on my Instagram not too long ago that just kind of some of the reasons or the ways we know if we're coaching on autopilot. And I'm trying to remember what the specific thing regarding the cues was. But like one of the things I said, if you're using, we've talked about this already, right? If we're using progressions and you don't know why you're using the progression, you're just continuing to use the progression every time because that's just the progression you use. And if it's like, well, why? It's like, well, I don't know. It's just what we use. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. You have 1 or 2 to 3 go-to cues, but when they don't work, you're stuck. You use the same couple cues. Okay.
I
saw
say
the
it louder.
fault. I see the fault. Step 1, right? Super pumped. Okay, I'm going to give a cue, and I know this is a good cue. You give a cue, it doesn't work. Oh, okay, I have another cue. I'm going to give that cue, it doesn't work. Now,
I'm going to say that cue louder. That must be it. You probably didn't hear it, or I'm going to say it more forceful because that'll make you do it. No, I meant chest up. No,
chest up.
Your chest. That's what I want up. You can't get it. Well, you suck. I'm moving on.
Or the other thing that happens often is that you just walk away or end up saying better and then walk away, even though it's not better. You know it's not better, but because the cue wasn't effective, you don't have anything else to give at that point. You've got to do something. So you say better and walk away. So having these, it's so important to have your tool belt of cues that you go back to quickly so that you can cue someone fast. But if you run out of them, it's important to know, okay, well, how can I tell them something different right now on the fly that maybe I don't typically say? And that's where it comes back to, I think, what we're talking about, right? Like, what body part is out of place and how can I give it some sort of a directive as to where to go, even if it's a little different than the cue that I normally. We're going to keep working on that. Yeah. Which is better than saying better if it's not better, I'll say. Right.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly,
and that's okay.
Exactly.
You're stuck and you're like, I don't really quite know what to say, but I know it's not better. It's okay to say, we're going to keep working on that, walk away, go fix some other people and then come back.
Yeah, and I think to that point, and I make this in the second drill at the level 2. If anybody's been in my seeing and correcting drill at the level 2, is like I intentionally try to put people in a position like that scenario where either they can't fix the fault with their go-to cue, or I'm forcing them to use a different cueing style because I want them to feel that experience. And to your point, it's okay if it doesn't work. We can call a spade and say, hey, we're going to keep working on that. But most of the time, I know myself as a coach in the early days is like I'd use my 2 or 3 cues, and if they didn't work, I just walked away, and then I never revisit it because I didn't have any other options. Whereas the reality of it is we can walk away, but if we are intentional about thinking through different ways to say or different ways to give a cue, and we come back, whether that new cue is going to work or not, it's just the process of thinking through new ideas and new concepts that's going to work towards finding the ultimate solution at some point, right? So I think that's just such an important concept for coaches to take away, is like, it's all right if you don't have the cue right now, but that doesn't mean that you're just going to abandon fixing that athlete. You still need to sit on it. You need to ponder. We need to think, and we need to try something else. And it's also all right if what we try doesn't work. I can't tell you how many times I've tried giving a cue or a correction and it does not work. And I'm like, in fact, not only does it not work, but it makes it worse. And I'm like, never mind. Let's not do that at all. In fact, bring your feet right back in and we'll go from there. So I think it's all right to go that route. I want to come back to verbal cues and figuring out how to say the same thing in different ways. But before we do that, I want to move on. So we've talked about verbal cues: short, specific, and actionable; body part that's out of place, where does it go to get in place; visual cues, what are we looking to do, or how do we provide a visual cue?
Typically, we want to think about providing a contrast for our athletes. Like, hey, you're doing this and I need you to do this. Or look at my knee. You're doing this. I need you to do this. So we're showing them, and it doesn't happen this way all of the time, but we can show them what they're doing wrong by just exaggerating that specific body part. And then we show them what it looks like when it gets in the right position, so they can just see the contrast of what they're doing, what we want them to do.
Yeah, it should be clear and obvious. And so exaggerating the different positions is huge. And most of the time we teach it of like showing a full rep of, hey, you're doing this, and showing the bad one, and then a full rep of I want you to do this, and showing a good one. But there are scenarios where I just show them the bad and like immediately, hey, do this instead. So an example that I think about a lot, and this is a fault that shows up a lot, is somebody that's in a squatty setup in the deadlift. Shoulders are behind the bar. And so I'll get in front of them and I'll say, hey, Kristin, take a look at me. You're like this with your hips. And I start low and then I just bring them up, right? It's still showing that contrast, but I'm not like doing a rep, standing up, and then showing another rep. You know what I mean? Like the amount of time it takes to do that. Same deal with like a dip in a push press. If we're doing the dip and hold, I'll just get down there and show them, hey, you're like this, just lean your shoulders back or something like that. Can you think of any time, can you think of any instance where you show the full rep of bad and then good versus like just show the position and alternate and change the position?
I actually rarely show the full rep when I'm doing a visual. Rarely. Like, I'm trying to think, like, I'd say 99% of the time, I'm just showing in isolation that one specific like section of the movement or thing that I need them to do, whether it's setup position probably would be like you were talking about with the setup, but that's not really showing the rep. And that you're doing this, now do this. Oftentimes I'll even leave out the you're doing this. I'll just be like, hey, look, or I guess if it's like, hey, look at my arms. I want them to look like this as you stand, right? Sometimes I don't do the like, you're doing this and I need you to do this. I just show them my elbow and say, hey, look at my elbow. I need you to look like this as you go. And I'm not doing the whole snatch or doing the whole clean, or oftentimes not. And I know we talk about the visual being like this contrast, and there's a time and a place for that. And if it's in the middle of a workout or it's a dynamic movement and I have to be quick with it, I'll eliminate that part sometimes if I feel like it doesn't necessarily need to be there in order for the cue to be effective.
Yeah, and I think that makes a good point of like you showing that I need your arm to be straight implies that it must have been bent. And that'll be something that we'll go back to with verbal cues of not having to tell somebody what they're doing wrong in order to tell them what they need to do to fix it. But yeah, I'm with you. I do think about like something like a push jerk and hip extension, and especially if I'm seeing somebody that's not extending their knees, so they're jumping off the ground, but their knees never straighten. I will show the full bad jump, but I don't do any of the overhead portion. Hey, look at my knees. And then I'll do this jump where my knees stay bent. You see that? Now here's what I want. Watch my knees on this one. And then I'll really emphasize jumping and straightening my legs. Now I'm not doing any of the overhead stuff because that's not the important part of the fault.
And it can be distracting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like your athlete. And that's why it gets so important to be like, look at my knees, watch my hips. Because if you just say, hey, watch me, you're doing this and you do the full push jerk. And I need you to do this, and you do the full push jerk. Even if your visual cue is solid, if your athlete doesn't know where they're looking or what body part you're referring to, it's not going to be an effective cue. So there's these best practices we talk about, right? Like, hey, you're doing this, and I need you to do this. But we have to peel that apart a little bit and really look at it from a more critical eye, right? Like if you just do it the way that it's listed on paper, you're doing this, I need you to do this. It's not necessarily going to be effective if your athlete doesn't know where to look on your body and what you're actually talking about.
And so to Antonio's question here,
is Antonio,
it okay to talk? Yeah,
what's
is
up?
it okay to talk during the visual cue? I think it is, but it should be just as Kristin alluded to right there of like, hey, you're doing this with your knees. Watch my knees. I jump. My knees are bent. I want you to do this with your knees. And I'll sometimes say, think about, or I'll show it. And then I'll be like, think about pressing the ground away or something. So a little bit of verbal right there is fine. I think where that can go wrong is somebody going, hey, look at my knees. You're doing this. And so when you're jumping, your knees are staying bent, and that's causing you to not hit hip extension. And now all of a sudden, if I'm going through this full explanation, it's like somebody has the choice of either watching or listening, and it's hard to do both at the same time. So Antonio, I think it's all right to talk while giving a visual cue, but it should just be like pointing at the body part that you want and maybe giving a little guidance there, but try not to fall into the trap of over explaining what you're actually doing, because that kind of defeats the purpose of just showing it visually. Omar's got a good question. I'd be curious your thoughts on this one. Would you consider how do I say that?
I think he's saying oral, like
oral cue.
I think, right?
Like a verbal cue. Yeah, exactly. So something that they can hear. Sometimes I tell an athlete to listen to the ground when their feet are landing on the snatch. It should coincide with the same time the arms are locking out. And Jess makes a good point of talking about that with the box jumps.
Okay.
And double unders. As soon as I read, Omar, your question, I started thinking of double unders because you should hear kind of the whip of the rope. What are your thoughts with his relating to the snatch?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. This is where I'm like, I don't really care how we're categorizing it, right? Like if that's a cue that works, then
so you get in the nuance. It's like, is this technically a verbal cue, or is this like is it tactile because they're trying to,
or is it a fourth cueing style? It's a fourth cueing style. We're creating it right now.
We didn't. Omar created it.
Omar created it. Fourth cueing style. Yeah. I mean, probably a verbal cue because you're telling them what to listen to. I don't know. I don't think I'd get too wrapped up in which type of cue it is, really. Yeah. I do. The answer to this.
I would be interested, like with this one in particular, I'd be curious. Like I think of this and I'm like, I don't know that I could register hearing my feet and feeling my arms at the same time. So I don't know as an athlete if I could do that, but I guarantee you there are people that would make sense for. So I think it's worth a go. And remind us once again, Kristin, how do we know if it's a good cue?
If it works.
Yeah, and so if this what you're telling your athlete, if that seems to work and improve their movement, then it must be a good cue. So I like it. There we go. Yeah, audible. There it is.
Mhm.
All right. So we've talked about verbal, we've talked about visual. Tell me about tactile cues. How do we
Tactile
approach those?
Tactile cues, I always just think tactile target. Like you're giving your athlete some sort of a target, some sort of an external object or external target so that they can understand their positioning, right? And so we want, and I stress the word target because we don't want to grab onto our athlete and manipulate them and move them. We want them to do the work. And oftentimes if we find ourselves, I'll give you a really common example. If you're getting people in the setup for like an overhead squat, let's say, and really common in the overhead squat setup is that the PVC pipe is likely behind the body, right? And so I'll see coaches all the time just grab the PVC pipe and pull it forward, grab the PVC pipe, pull it forward. And they're continuing to do that every single time. And it's because the athlete is not learning where to position the bar and where to pull it. They're just passively letting the coach move the bar. And so if we give a target and say, perhaps, hey, I want you to pull the bar forward till you feel my hand. Now the athlete has to do the work and they are understanding, okay, this is where my arms need to be. This is what it feels like. And you're so much more likely to get that fix that's going to last rather than if we continue to just move them. Yeah. And what's the other reason we don't want to move our athletes?
Just like Kyle said, don't make it weird.
Don't get weird. Tactile cues don't make it weird. Yeah.
And I see this a lot of times too, is like coaches are kind of like, they're so in it of what they're doing. And in the example that I think about is something like a front squat, and somebody's at the bottom of their front squat and their elbows are dropping. And so the coach runs over and like grabs their elbows and just starts picking them up. And inevitably what's going to happen to the person as we do that?
They're likely going to fall back. You know,
they're
if you're pushing them beyond where they have the ability to be, right?
Exactly. So given the target maybe above the elbows and say, hey, try to touch my hand. And now they're, like you said, creating that mind-body connection. They're moving towards the target. That's going to be a more impactful cue. Now, that being said, I can think of a few positions and movements where I probably do more of the moving for them, or I assist in that. Can you think of any times where it's like it's the opposite, or you'll jump in and actually
I'll help people with like an external rotation, like armpits. I'll either overhead position for the overhead squat or like a finish position for a press. You know, if they're like this, I'll oftentimes kind of like get behind them and like pull their armpits forward.
Yeah, that same one for me is like sometimes people are pressing up so hard and they don't understand the armpits forward. And I'm like, hey, you got to relax your shoulders now. And then I'll grab like the outside of their arms and turn it. There's that one.
And then gymnastics, there's probably some gymnastics things that I help with. I can't think off the top of my head, but
the rack position in the front squat, the drill, have you done like the PNF stretch with people, or even just to like
getting behind them?
You put you're in front of them. Like you put your fingers on the outside of the PVC pipe and then your arms go underneath their elbows and you pull the pipe down and press up on their elbows to help kind of like stretch them out to get them into that position so they feel what that's like. Those are probably the primary two that I can think of where I do the moving more so for them. Outside of that, I don't know that there's much that I do.
Yeah, and if y'all listening have any other ones that you do and you want to throw it in the chat, we will tell you whether we agree or not. Just kidding.
Kip swings.
Not really though.
I've tried like with kip swings, I've done this before where you can kind of like push them forward, like push their legs back a little bit and push their chest forward. And I guess speaking of that, Marlena, is like on like pull up or muscle ups when there's people that are close and you can do the spotting drill where you give them just a little bit of a boost either under
that's more like a scale help though than it is like
a tactile cue.
Yeah,
potentially. So this is the nuance. Yeah.
Right. And this is the nuance where like, which box are we putting this in? Which category? And it goes back to, I know we're going to get there, but kind of the point of what we wanted to talk about, right? Is we're talking about the categories and how we Do we determine different things? But at the end of the day, what works is what works. And so there's certain things that over the years, both of us, I'm sure, and you guys listening as well, have just adjusted a little bit. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to do that exactly as written on paper because it doesn't really work that well. I'm going to do it. This is the way that I'm going to do it because this is what actually works. Like there's a fix for a deadlift that we see all the time, where the hip and the shoulder, we want them to rise together. And so it's like, put a tactile cue, right? Put hand on the middle of the back,
we don't see that all the time. We talk about all the time.
We talk about it.
Our lectures, but I've never seen it actually work, and I've never.
It does not work for me. I've tried it.
I don't even understand it.
And it's like hand on the lower back, hand on the middle of the shoulder blades, and you want equal pressure as your athlete goes to stand so that the hip and the shoulder rise together. And I never use that because I've tried it several times, specifically in like the level 1 small groups where we're teaching the deadlift with the PVC, and I don't find that it ever works, so I don't ever use it.
and so here's where, like, if we go back to that concept of body part out of place, where does it go to get in place? That actually helps me derive not only a good verbal cue, but any sort of other style of cue. So for example, what is that cue trying to correct?
Either the shoulder rising too quickly or the hips rising too quickly. Like it's trying to correct that that relatively constant torso angle, right?
Okay. Yep. And so the relative constant torso angle, what does that ultimately do for the lift? It allows for what?
All the muscles to be used, and then also the bar path to be straight.
Yeah, the bar path to be straight, bar to move in a straight line. And so if somebody's shoulder is rising too soon, ultimately what's going to be happening to the bar path?
It's going to be going around the knee.
Awesome. So now all of a sudden we've got two body parts that are out of place. The shoulder is up too soon and the knee is too far forward. So if I'm looking for a cue to give, I probably want to target either the shoulder or the knee.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order for the knee to be, in order for the shoulder to be in place, it needs to stay down. And I think it's hard for me to be like, give a cue of like, keep your shoulders down until your hips rise. It's like that to me seems awkward. So instead I would probably attack the knee. And so we could go with the verbal cue, which would be what would be your verbal cue if somebody's leading with their shoulder and it's causing the bar to go out around the knee?
I just say, pull the knee back as you stand.
Sweet. Now we can take that same concept and go, all right, if the verbal cue didn't work of pull your knee back as you stand, how could we turn that into a tactile cue?
We could put our hand or a PVC pipe or whatever on the back of the knee and say, hey, I want you to push the back of your knee into my hand as you stand, or into the PVC pipe, whatever.
Sweet. And so now it takes that same concept of body part out of place, the shoulder's out of place, the knee's out of place. I think the knee makes more logical sense for an athlete to wrap their head around. And now I've got a verbal cue, push your knee back as you lift. I've got a tactile cue, hey, you feel my hand or the PVC pipe, just press into this, which is going to force their knees back as they stand. And then a visual one would be, I think, pretty simple here of like just showing an exaggerated, my knees are bent. I'm just swooping the bar around my knees. And I'm going to show the right thing, which is pushing the knees back. Cool. We've taken the concept of body part out of place. Where does it go to get in place? And we've just created 3 cues. And if we sat here for another minute talking about that, we could probably double that or triple that just by saying those same things in different ways. So I think that's the big takeaway that I want you guys listening to have is like, how can I use this idea of body part out of place? Where does it go to get in place to start to formulate my cues? What is this? I'm going to get to this in a second. Now, let's get back to that original fault. If the hips and shoulders are not rising together, we already talked about if the shoulder rises too soon. What's the other issue? How else could this thing go wrong?
You mean if the hips rise too soon? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the opposite would be the hips rise too soon. So now this turns into like a stiff-legged deadlift. And so where would you go with this one? How would you try to correct that fault?
My go-to for that is visual.
Oh, okay. So what do you
Yeah.
do?
I'll get in front of them. And these faults we're talking about now, this is one of the examples where I do show what they're doing. Like
Yep.
hey, look at my hips is what you're doing. And I need watch my knees or whatever. And I'll I'll just kind of show them the contrast there. I'm trying to think if I'm like farther away from someone, I need to yell a visual cue. I'll say lift be more aggressive with the chest as you stand, like delay the hips a little bit. I don't know. That's one that it
I
just
usually
depends
just
on who it is, who's in front of me, what they're, there's a lot, there's so much of this that it depends on the athlete as to
yeah.
what my go-to cue is. So I can't definitively be like, this is the cue I always use, because it just kind of depends, right?
Yeah, I usually that one's a verbal cue for me, and it's an overemphasize of, hey, on this next one, I just want you to lead with your shoulders or lead with your chest. Now, I will say this: we're talking about how to fix that, and I'll be honest, it's a very rare fault if somebody's in the proper setup position, because more than likely the reason that that's actually happening, either somebody's pulling the bar around their knees or their butt shooting up too soon, is what's typically the root cause if either one of those are the faults we're seeing when they're moving dynamically.
They're just set up with their hips too low. Like,
Yes. And so I think we lost Kristin for a second there. It's either my internet or hers. I think it's hers. If somebody's hips are too low,
am I back?
yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You're back. If somebody's hips are too low, when they lift, they're going to pull around their knees, or they're going to lift their hips up to get their knees out of the way so the bar can travel straight. So more than likely, it's going to be a setup correction that we need to make. But if somebody is in the right setup, there is a chance that they pull around their knees because their shoulder leads the way, or that they shoot their hips up too soon, just because probably they're used to just strictly using their hamstrings. And so we still want to be able to use that. This is what we've got going on in the chat here with Boucher. I think this is a Monty Python. Yep. How do we know she's a witch? I know we watch Kabo's coaching videos. We know she's a witch because of how effective she is at seeing and correcting and how easy that is.
I have never seen Monty Python. That's why I don't know that reference. I'll put that on my list.
That's on your list. Yeah, I'm sure it's at the top of the list there, Boucher. Next time you
Yeah.
see her, you need to ask her which one she's watched. All right. So we've talked verbal, visual, and tactile. We've started talking about some common faults and what your common go-to correction is. Let's move to this one. A common fault in the finish position for any of our pressing movements, so a shoulder press, a push press, or a push jerk. What do you expect to go wrong with most of our athletes in that finish position?
Well, we're either going to see people press slightly forward, so they're not going to have the bar completely over like the middle of the body, or we're going to see little ribs flare out. Those are typically the ones that I see most commonly, especially when we have load. We don't tend to see people finish with like too bent of an elbow.
Yeah. And usually those two things coincide, right? If somebody is tight in the shoulders, which is the tendency to be forward, here's what I'll tell you is if we're doing like a strength day and a shoulder press or push press and there's like heavy load and they're going to hang out in that position for any amount of time, rarely is the bar forward, because we know that like if the bar's forward, there's nothing supporting it. Usually that is something that shows up in a lighter weight, higher volume of reps. Yep. So if you see a bunch of push press, it's usually something like a push press in a workout where somebody's just punching it out in front, or it's thrusters or things like that. And so that's absolutely one. But the other one that you mentioned, I think, is the one that almost everybody does to some degree. Even the people that are fairly neutral can probably get better there. So if we think of somebody that's in an overextended spine position with the bar over their head, what's your go-to way to fix that? And Marlene nailed it, right? Loss of midline. What's your go-to way to fix that? And well, I'll get to Jess's answer in a second.
I'll usually tell people to pull their ribs down, or I'll say crunch your belly, crunch your abs, squeeze your abs, crunch your ribs, crunch your belly, pull your ribs down, whatever comes out of my mouth at that moment. But it's usually something along that line. Either squeeze your belly, flex your abs, pull your ribs down. That's because the body part that's out of place is that the ribs are flaring up and there's that little arch in their lower back. And so what I'm not going to do is say, flatten your lumbar spine or whatever,
sure.
You know,
And
that's
there's usually
well, how do I do that? What's that mean?
Yeah. Give me more midline or something like that. And the ribs are out of place, but there's typically another body part that's out of place. And it's like the ribs are on the front side.
Like the hips, like
the hips are usually back.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll say, and again, it depends on what it looks like. And it depends on how far they're back. But yeah, that's definitely, you know, that's a good visual. That's a good visual cue opportunity too.
That's where I was going, is that is like, that's a fault that my go-to is visual there of like, hey, you're doing this, I want you to do this. And that's one where you can show the contrast of the midsection. And to Omar's point, what I found is that I would give the like, pull your ribs down, and people would literally pull their ribs down and that would just make their hips go farther back. And I'm like, you did exactly what I told you to do, and it's made it exactly worse. So to his point,
or they'll do it so hard that their whole upper back just starts to like they're literally in the halfway through
like
a
hollow position. Yeah, exactly. So that's one where it's like, more often than not, if at all possible, I try to give a visual cue to fix that one of just showing that overextended position. Hey, I want you to crunch your ribs down. Then you can add in the like squeeze your glutes or squeeze your butt. And that usually ties those two things together. I like Jess's option here of tuck your rib cage into your pelvis. I think that's going to help give people the context of it's not just rib cage down. We want the hips to be where they need to go as well. I've already got this one.
And that's a good one too, where I'm not going to do the whole pressing movement, right? Like they don't need to see me in the overhead position. I'll literally come and you can't see me, but like I'll point here and it's like, hey, you're like this. I need you to be like that, right? Like kind of exaggerate that, which is another reason we shouldn't walk around with our PVC pipe, because you can't use your hands and fingers if you have your PVC pipe in your hand all the time.
But if you have it, you can hit them right in the gut with the PVC pipe.
Yes,
don't pretend, Kyle. Just do it. There's
the argument to keep your PVC pipe in your hand. All right, I stand corrected. That's great.
Yeah.
In the gut. We got you, Kyle.
Yeah. Yep.
I just use my fist. I don't need the PVC pipe. I'm like, hey, pretend I'm going to just punch you in the gut with my fist, which I actually do. That is something that I'll like. That's a cue. I won't actually hit them, but I'll do that little pretend, because what happens when you do that, you guys know, it's like you brace your belly. It's like, that's exactly what we want.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good one. Omar, when do you move on? Give me more context on that fault in particular, or just in general. What do you got?
Fifth cue, violence. Did you get this? Sorry, I got distracted by hitting with the PVC pipe. Have y'all ever had an athlete that you tried every cue possible and it still didn't work? Did you put that up there?
I don't know that I did. Okay.
Yeah.
I might have. I think it was the other one.
Yeah. When do you move on? When none of your cues work?
Here's what
I have.
Yes, that has been the case. I've done that. And this is one where it's like, we've got to move on because none of our tools are working. And so I either need to come up with a new cue. And so I'm going to need some time to think about that or ponder that. Or more than likely, we're not truly understanding the root cause of the issue.
Yeah, that's a good point.
From my experience, it's like
sometimes the root cause of the issue is an extreme lack of kinesthetic awareness by our athlete, though. Honestly, I've had that before. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. But more often than not, I would bet that we are focusing on the wrong thing. We're trying to fix the symptom versus the root cause. And that is a quick path to not being able to get it fixed. Can you think of an example?
Oh yeah. One of the go-to examples for that is the forward inclination of the torso in the push press.
Okay.
Because there's like 3 or 4 different root causes for that. So, tell me some of the reasons why somebody's torso goes forward in the push press.
Well, for one, they're not pushing their knees forward. They're just shooting their hips back. That would be one.
So if they initiate it like a squat, no matter what, if their butt's going back, their chest is going to go forward. Cool. That's one. What's another one?
One would be if they are going too deep in their dip, that can pull them forward. Even if they start vertical.
At some point, we're going to have to create space. Their hips are going to go back.
Which is why, if you think about it, when you squat, the torso is going to come forward a little bit for most people because we're going to that range of motion, right? That's why if you do a quarter squat and everyone's torso looks great, as soon as you start to increase range of motion, we start to see the torso come. All right. What's the third one? What did we get? We got,
you can let people can initiate well, and they just allow their chest to fall forward or their elbows to drop. So those are the three like most common offenders from my experience. Right. And a lot of times the coach, like as a coach, our cue and correction is going to be, all right, I see your chest going forward. And so I'm going to cue you, lift your chest up, or maybe even pull your shoulders back. Well, if somebody's hips are going too far back, or like initiating the movement with their hips going back, it doesn't matter how much they keep their chest up because it's an initiation problem. It's not actually like a chest problem. And what'll end up happening is you can get somebody to this like really overextended position to where their chest is kind of up, but their butt's still going back. And so under load, it's still going to lead to their torso being forward. So that's one. You were going to say something? No,
I'm just laughing because it's just, I mean, this is all part of the nature of just learning, right? And coaching. And I'm just, the amount of times my go-to cue is like hand on the back. It's like, keep your back in contact with my hand when you dip. And it like, wouldn't happen. And it's like, if they're initiating with their knees or the chest every time, or they're pushing their hips back, I should say, they're not going to be able to keep their hand in contact or their body in contact with my hand. And I just know, like, I remember just every time it's like, okay, I'm going to fix it. I fixed in the bottom of the dip, fixing the bottom of the dip, fixing the bottom of the dip. And then when we start to make the movement go, it's like happening again. It's
right.
Like, why aren't they getting it? And it's just because I was missing what actually was happening. And I'm just laughing because that's the process, right? And it's like, oh, I hate teaching the push press. And it's like, well, why do I hate teaching the push press? It's because I'm not seeing what's really going on, and it's hard for me to correct. And so that's one of those things I've realized over the years, that most of the movements I struggle with, or I don't really like teaching, or I don't have a lot of corrections for, it's because I wasn't really looking for what was actually going on, you know?
Or maybe it wasn't that you weren't looking for, you just didn't know that there was different reasons. There wasn't different reasons as to why it's going on. And so, Omar, I think when none of your cues work, you've got to evaluate, like, and get to a point of realize, and it's hard for me to say this because you don't know what you don't know. So I'm like, hey, are they not working because you don't know the root cause? Well, if you don't know the root, like if you knew the root cause, you would probably attack that and fix that. So that's one reason. The other thing I'll look at is like somebody's effort. If I'm giving cues and it's not improving, but I also notice that they're not trying, like, and it's rare that people don't try at all or do what you say. That could be it. So it's like, if somebody is giving me full effort, but it's still not working, this is where, like, hey, we're getting there, or that's better, we'll keep working on it. And I think I think of that idea the same as with Brad's, like they've got the inability to achieve the position we want. Like, I think about this with squats. Well, what do I want with a squat? Well, I want a fully mature, neutral spine, full depth, to where when their air squat goes down and up, they look really upright. When they've got a barbell in their hand for the front squat, the thruster, or the overhead squat, the bar is moving in a straight line. That's the position I want them to achieve. No matter how good you are as a coach, most of your athletes aren't going to be able to go from an immature squat to that perfectly upright squat in a, single session or a couple months. I mean, Coach Glassman would talk about it being a 3 to 5 year odyssey. And I will tell you right now that I've been doing this way longer than 5 years.
It's a 15-year odyssey for you.
It's a 20-year odyssey.
20-year odyssey.
Yeah. And so, there's some of that stuff is like, how much can you live with, and when are you going to be satisfied? And a lot of that has to do with the effort that they're giving me and the improvement that they're making.
Yeah,
if they're giving me full effort, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, the progress, not perfection. We say that a lot.
I like
Mhm.
Kyle's point here too, is like, I can move on as long as they're safe. If it's a risky or an injury potential thing, then we need to then I'm going to make some adjustments, and it's not okay to just move on, because then you're running the risk of them getting hurt. Same deal if they're trying to lift a weight or something that's going to prevent them from hitting the stimulus and throw off my entire class plan. That's an issue. We can always come back like that. Let's see what Jess has here. How do you help them increase kinesthetic awareness? I have athletes who can't seem to get the jump rope. When she jumps, her arms stop moving. When she swings the rope, she stops jumping. This, from my experience, is where if you have any of those, I don't know if, like, we have some of those ropes where it's handles and then there's a big heavy rope, but they're not connected. And so it's for people that can't jump, is what I think it was designed for, where you sit on the ground and you sit on a box or on the edge of the rower, the seat of the rower, and these things are hitting the ground. But if you come up with a way for her to jump and swing her hands, but without the rope that's going to stop if she misses it, that might be a way to do it. I've seen people grab both sides of the jump rope handles and then just have the rope off to the side and they swing it. Back in the day, what was it? There was like handles of jump ropes and strings onto like a wiffle ball.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There's still, we don't have any of those, but there's definitely, I see them at gyms still. And that's exactly what they're for, to help people practice jump roping
and swinging,
or to even scale a jump rope without having to actually jump over the rope. People in the comments are also suggesting the penguin hops, where you
jump and hit your thighs
hands with like you're a penguin.
I like that for timing. If for somebody that struggles with their hands and feet, like spinning, I think you need to get them to spin their hands, right? Because tapping your hands and spinning your hands are somewhat different. Yes, you need them both to work at the same time. So I think that's one tool, but I would also do something that allows them to spin.
Because my understanding here, Jess, is we're not talking about double unders. We're talking about just jump rope. So practicing, continuing to do both. And practice, I mean, finding these different drills and things are good, but also practice, reps. I see it with an athlete who has an inability to put their arms overhead without arching their back. Either the bar will be out in front with the stable midline, or they arch their back to get it overhead. Yeah, she says singles.
So yeah, with what Brad's bringing up here, I would like, you first read this at first glance, I look at that and I go, all right, well, they're probably so tight in their shoulders that's what's causing it. So maybe I widen their grip. But the other thing, I've seen athletes, and I've had athletes that have full range of motion in their shoulders, and that's not the issue. It's literally they don't have the kinesthetic awareness to lock their arms out, squeeze their belly, and lock their knees. Like I can remember working with it was funny. It was kind of in the early day when a lot of people still thought that CrossFit was dangerous, and there was a physical therapist that wanted to work with us because they thought we injured everybody. And I was like, cool, let me show you what we actually do, and come in for one of our intro classes. And I remember teaching him the shoulder press with an empty barbell, and he literally couldn't keep his arms locked, his belly tight, and his knees straight at the same time. It was like the bar started in the rack. I'd be like, all right, cool. Flex your quads, squeeze your butt, squeeze your guts. Everything looked good. He would press the bar up. He'd only get to here. Everything was still locked. And I'd be like, all right, lock your elbows out. And he'd lock his elbows and his knees would unlock. And I'd be like, all right, straighten your knees. And his belly would unlock and his back would round. And I'd be like, squeeze your abs, and his elbows would do this. And I was like, oh my gosh,
what is happening? Is this a joke? Are you tricking me?
Yeah. And that is just that like kinesthetic awareness. That's that mind body connection. It's like all of the pieces are there. He had all the range. He had all the strength to do each of those things independently. He just could not link them all together. And so that's one where like, this is where the value of our specific warm-ups, when we are holding positions and we're forcing people to move with a PVC pipe or an empty barbell, and we're having them pause and we're giving them static cues and watching them dynamically. this is how people start to develop that kinesthetic awareness. And that's why it's so important to practice these movements day in and day out. Is there's just so much value in that. Let's see. We've got all the conversations here about the penguin claps, the jump rope. I like that. Omar, you're right. As long as they are staying safe, we can move on. One perfect rep. Cool. What else we got here? Yep.
Marlena says she is an athlete that does jump rope backwards. She can't get the concept of jump rope forward. I've seen that, if not too often, but a handful of times where they can jump rope backwards, but not forwards.
Here's the test for everybody listening. I'm going to test you actually, Kabo. What was the first year of the Open?
I don't know. 2013?
2011.
2011.
And the first workout
was double unders and snatches, like hang power snatches and double unders.
It was full power snatches, but it was lightweight, snatches, 75 and 55. Okay. And there was a well, he wasn't quite prominent yet, but it went on to be a prominent athlete that was doing double unders and doing that workout, but he could only do double unders backwards.
Miko Salo.
That's incorrect. Miko, actually, when he was still at the peak of his powers, he couldn't do double unders.
Rich Froning.
Good at those. Was not him. Somebody else, though.
Dan Bailey. Kristin Clever. Tanya Wagner.
What did you say to everybody? It's Josh Bridges. And I want to say,
I have no idea. I'm just trying to guess old school. Heather Berger.
It was 2012 or 13. I think CrossFit made the rule. Like in 2011, they didn't specify whether it had to go forward or backwards. And so it was like, yeah, good to go. And in one of the years, 12 or 13, they made the rule that the double under the rope had to pass forward. So anyways, all right. Go ahead. What do you do it? There it is. Boom. Can you speak to how you like to use cueing during the Metcon or the workout compared to general and specific warm-ups? Okay, but what do you got for that?
The very first thing that comes to mind when I think about this is I do so much more static cueing during the general and specific warm-up. And then during the workout, it's a lot more dynamic because during the workout, they're not holding positions anymore. During the general and specific, I'm holding them in positions much more. So that's the first thing that I think of.
For me personally, I think of the specific warm-up as my information gathering and my trial and error to figure out the cues that are going to work. And so it's like I'm seeing, cueing, and correcting. And during that time, I'm like, all right, we're deadlifting today. We're cleaning today. Let's go with that one. Kristin's tendency is to want to set up with her hips low in the setup, and she's not reaching full hip extension. Well, if I gave her a cue in the specific warm-up that fixed her setup position, one, I probably reinforced it a handful of times. And then if I was able to find a cue that worked on her hip extension, maybe it was squeeze or quads, I'm going to take that as the mental note of like, all right, when the workout starts and all she's worried about is her rounds and reps or the time or whatever, she's going to forget about the things I told her in the specific warm-up. So I'm going to make a mental note to double check her setup position and to make sure that she's hitting or look for hip extension. And so to your point, usually in the Metcon, it's more dynamic stuff because they're cycling reps or things like that. But I will use the breaks when they're putting the bar down and catching their breath, or when they're transitioning from one movement to the next, to remind, hey, Kristin, in this next one, remember, I want your hips up a little bit higher in that setup. And then you do that. Then I try to reinforce, hey, good job. Now on this next clean, squeeze your quads or whatever that is. So I think of like my general and specific warm-up is my information gathering. And then the workout, I'm just revisiting everything that I fixed in the general or specific warm-up.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to do our checkbacks, right? So we give a cue and we look to make sure if it works, then we catalog it and remember like, okay, that's what worked for that person. And also knowing that if they're doing it in the specific warm-up, you may have already said this, but it more than likely is going to show up once they're moving under intensity, right? Like we're super focused on technique and we're holding positions, we're moving slower, and they have a fault. Well, even if we fix that fault in the specific warm-up, once we start adding speed and load and fatigue, it is almost guaranteed that it's going to pop up again. And so I'm going to be looking for it. And then, like you said, I'm going to remember the thing that fixed it so I can just yell it to them quickly. And hopefully it will remind them what they need to do to fix it.
Yeah, Kyle says that beautifully. During the Metcon cues, I look at it as reminders and reinforces what was done in the warm-up. That's it. Yeah, I think Brad brings up a good point here. It can be challenging when the music is going and things can feel fast. I also like to find a natural break or pause to say something right next to them rather than across the room. Heck yeah, because when the music's loud and somebody's heart rate's at 150 to 180, they're probably not listening to the cross class cueing. So what kind of cues do you typically use? Well, here's one disclaimer I'm going to make, and Kristin can appreciate this one. In the workout, I know we want to hear the music playing, which is great, but if it is so loud that you can't hear me talking to you when you're standing right next to me, as a coach, I am like, it's too loud. It's like, it's taking away my ability to work out. And I'm particularly passionate about this because for myself, like, too loud of music just gives me a headache. So if I'm working out and the coach turns the music up too loud, it's like, I can't stand it. It about makes me want to quit. So anyways.
Well, it's all about having a balance of everything, right? Like, we don't want to have, too much of anything is going to result in maybe like a deficiency or lack of something else. It's the same thing. If we are trying to create this cool, fun, vibrant, crazy environment and we like crank the music up to the point where we can't effectively cue our athletes, the music is too loud. And on the flip side of that, if we don't have any music and now everyone's like, this is an awkward environment and I can hear myself breathe and this is weird, then like put the music on a little bit louder, like find the balance. But at the end of the day, if anything is preventing you from being able to walk around and effectively coach, that's literally what we're there to do, is encourage our people, but also make them better. Then like assess it and be like, okay, even if you were like, turn the music up, like, cool, I'll turn the music up. But as long as they can still hear me and if I'm saying something and I can't even hear myself, yeah, it's too loud. Turn the music down.
Too loud. So back to my original question before I took us off track there. When it comes to the workout, what kind of cues are you primarily using?
Mostly visual. Well, verbal and visual. Yeah. And again, it's like verbal are so important to be able. This is another reason why it's like you should be able to yell it from across the room. It should be short. It should be specific. I shouldn't have to ask like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand, because my athletes are in the middle of doing their workout and we should make it as easy as possible for them to remember. And another, piggybacking on what you said, if we're repeating something that already worked for them, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. However, with the music loud and people have their little horse blinders on and everything, if I'm yelling something to someone, I'm like, Marlena, pull the bar back or whatever I'm saying, and she's just not responding to me, you better believe I'm getting myself over there. I'm going to get right in front of her and I'm going to show her exactly what I want. So visual is super helpful during the workout because of the music and because there's so many things going on. But we still want to be able to use those verbal cues because I need to be able to, yell at people from wherever I happen to be standing.
Man, we were planning on giving you guys 10 minutes at the end here to ask questions. You guys did ask questions, and so I'm glad that we got a chance to answer that. But man, I can't believe we're already up at the top of the hour here. If you guys have any last question, you can drop that in the chat. We'd be happy to answer that. But per usual, if you guys enjoy this and you want more of this content, the knowledge is the place to be. We've got calls during the week. We've got tons of content, video of us coaching, cueing, correcting, all of this kind of stuff. And so you guys can take advantage of that. Also, if you're an affiliate owner, Affiliate University is providing free access. You guys got to apply. Still blows my mind that it's free. So you guys need to take advantage of that as well. And then I know we've got some cool things coming up. We've got a affiliate summit in Boston. Is it this weekend? Next weekend? Is it this weekend? Next weekend. All right. And then the summit in October
Affiliate Con.
in Dallas. Yeah, Affiliate Con.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for that. So
lots of fun stuff coming up.
Yep. So make sure you guys take advantage. As always, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Hit us up with any questions in the comments. If you guys need anything for us, or if there's a topic that you guys want us to discuss, we'll be happy to do so. So have a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. Now, if you're a coach who wants to coach more effectively, impact your members, and advance your career, then the Knowledge Pro is the next step. Inside, you'll get hundreds of coaching videos, weekly calls with level 4 coaches, and direct feedback on your coaching. From homework reviews to full class breakdowns, we do it all. This is the best way to grow as a coach and take your skills to the next level. Now you can join the Knowledge Pro at besthouroftheirday.com/the-knowledge. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Now keep coaching, keep improving, and we'll see you next time.